Listen up because we're diving into the sterile, fluorescent-lit nightmare that is the modern hospital, specifically the operating room. You'd think the scariest thing in an OR would be the medical bill or the resident who hasn't slept since the Obama administration, but no. We're talking about the gray man of St. Mary's. Hospitals are basically magnets for the supernatural because they're high-traffic transit hubs for the soul, and St. Mary's OR number 4 was the VIP lounge for things that shouldn't exist. It's the kind of place where the air feels like wet wool and the equipment has more glitches than a budget smartphone. So, here's the setup. It's the late 90s, and the night shift is populated by people who have replaced their blood with pure caffeine and spite. Enter our protagonist, a seasoned scrub nurse who had seen enough internal organs to be completely desensitized to human suffering, yet she still wasn't prepared for the absolute nonsense happening in room 4. The staff had a running joke that the room was unlucky, which is medical speak for "we're pretty sure a ghost lives here," but HR doesn't have a policy for exorcisms. Lights would flicker in patterns that looked suspiciously like Morse code for "get out," and the temperature would drop faster than a crypto token during a scandal. The gray man wasn't your cinematic, jump scare variety ghost. He was more of a loitering with intent type of entity. He looked like a blurred-out extra from a black and white movie, standing in the corner of the OR wearing what appeared to be vintage surgeon scrubs from the 1940s. Think less The Conjuring and more, "I'm here to audit your appendectomy." He wouldn't scream or throw scalpels. He'd just stand there, judging the modern surgical techniques with a palpable sense of disappointment. Honestly, having a spectral supervisor watching you work is the ultimate workplace harassment, but since he didn't have a pulse, the union couldn't really do much about it. The peak of this absurdity happened during a routine gallbladder removal. The surgeon, a guy with an ego large enough to have its own zip code, was mid-incision when the anesthesia monitor started behaving like it was possessed by a drum and bass DJ. The heart rate spiked, the blood pressure dropped, and the gray man decided it was his time to shine. He didn't just stand in the corner. He moved right up to the table. Several staff members saw a pair of translucent, gray hands reach out and hover over the patient's chest, effectively helping with the procedure. It's one thing to have a ghost in the room. It's another when he tries to play backseat surgeon without a license. At that moment, the power didn't just flicker. It took a full-blown sabbatical. The backup generators kicked in, but for 5 solid seconds, the room was bathed in that eerie, emergency red glow that makes everything look like a heavy metal music video. When the lights stabilized, the patient's vitals miraculously leveled out to a perfect, textbook rhythm. The surgeon, who usually had a witty remark for everything, was suddenly very interested in his own shoes. The gray man was gone, presumably back to whatever dimension houses pretentious medical spirits, leaving the team to finish the job in a silence so thick you could cut it with a, well, you know. After the great gallbladder incident, the hospital administration did what any billion-dollar corporation does. They ignored it completely. They brought in an electrician who basically said, "The wiring is fine. Maybe stop imagining things," which is the professional version of gaslighting. But the staff knew better. They started leaving offerings in room 4, like a stray tongue depressor or an extra pair of latex gloves, hoping the gray man would stay in his lane. It became a rite of passage for new residents. If you didn't see the blurry 1940s doctor during your first graveyard shift, did you even really work at St. Mary's? The funniest part of this haunting is the cynical reality of hospital life. People were less afraid of the ghost and more annoyed by the paperwork his appearances caused. "Hey, I can't finish this report because a Victorian-era surgeon touched the patient's heart and now the ECG is printing out grocery lists" isn't a valid excuse in the eyes of the board. The ghost was essentially treated like a broken vending machine, annoying, persistent, and something you just learned to work around while muttering under your breath about the lack of funding for supernatural pest control. Eventually, room 4 was decommissioned and turned into a storage closet, which is the ultimate indignity for a ghost. Imagine spending decades perfecting your spooky, judgmental surgeon persona just to end up haunting a stack of extra-large bedpans and boxes of industrial-strength floor cleaner. There are still reports of the motion sensor lights turning on in that closet at 3 a.m., but most people just assume it's a particularly athletic rat or the ghost trying to find where they moved the scalpels. It's hard to maintain an aura of mystery when you're surrounded by bulk-sized toilet paper. The takeaway here is that even in death, you can't escape the bureaucracy and banality of the medical field. If you're going to haunt somewhere, pick a luxury resort or a high-end vineyard. Haunting an OR just means you're stuck in a room that smells like iodine and failure for all eternity. The gray man is still there, presumably, hovering over a crate of 4 bags and wondering why nobody uses ether anymore. It's a tragic, sarcastic end to a story that really highlights how the afterlife is probably just as tedious as our current one, just with better lighting effects. So, next time you're in a hospital and the lights dim, or you feel a sudden chill, don't panic. It's probably just a disgruntled spectral doctor who thinks your surgeon's sutures look like amateur hour. Just roll your eyes, tell him to go check the inventory and storage, and carry on. After all, in the world of hospital hauntings, the ghost is usually the least of your problems. At least he isn't going to send you a bill for consultation services after the surgery. Stay cynical, stay alert, and for the love of everything holy, stay out of room 4. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.